Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming along today. I'm Sarah Pearce, the Development Officer for Scotland at the Heritage Trust Network, and I'm joined by Claire Black from Muffet Town Hall Trust, who'll be speaking later, giving our member case study. And our event today, Local Authority Information Session with the Heritage Trust Network. So this is one of our partner events, which we particularly aim at organisations that we aren't already connecting with. So the goal of this information session is to let you know what the Heritage Trust Network does, how it can support you and the communities in your local area. So this is our agenda for today. As I said, what is the Heritage Trust Network? We're going to have a look at our projects in Scotland, things that are particular to the activity going on in Scotland. Then we'll hear from the case study, Muffet Town Hall Trust, and then we'll move on to a Q&A session. So to start with, what does the Heritage Trust Network do? We are a membership body that brings together heritage trusts and any community group involved in regenerating a historic building. So we support groups from the very beginning. Perhaps they're a group of people wondering what to do about a decaying building in their town, all the way through to any small or major capital works to the long-term running of their regenerated building. So the buildings we work with do not have to be listed or in a conservation area. They just need to be traditionally built. Often they're on the Buildings at Risk register, but also they can include structures. So they might be walled gardens, bridges, railways, things like that. We currently have over 800 members across the UK, and nearly 150 of those are in Scotland. We're completely member-led and primarily focus on networking and peer-to-peer advice and learning. And our members form our trustees as well as our committees, so they really guide what we do. We've got a growing but small staff of 7 people based throughout the UK. In Scotland, it is myself, full-time, and we also have a heritage trainee post that is 6 months every year for the next 3 years. Our funding comes from the National Trust for Scotland, as well as Historic Environment Scotland. So thank you very much to them. Just to give you an idea of the spread of our members, here's a membership map. You can see the mountains tend to get away in the way a bit in the middle there. So honing it down now into what we actually do, looking at networking and peer-to-peer learning. This is a really big focus for us. It's a really important strand of what we do. And the reason that we focus on this is that we know at least one of our members will have the exact same experience and advice that another member needs. There's always someone who's done it before. We know that funders can't offer the support that we can, and they want to know that groups have a good idea of the road ahead when applying for funding. So joining the network shows that communities and trusts have support in place, and they've got a good idea of the whole rescue, restoration, regeneration process that's ahead. They're not undertaking anything blindly. We facilitate networking in quite a number of different ways. We have a really lively annual conference where over 200 UK members come together in a different location each year. This year, in fact, in October, we were in Newcastle and Gateshead, and in 2024, we're actually going to be in Scotland. The location is yet to be decided, so answers on a postcard. We run both online and in-person events. Some are grouped by region so that organisations can develop connections with their neighbouring trusts, while other events are themed around different topics. We run network days online, and those include regular slots around different areas. So we have Ask the Experts, then we have Meet the Funders, sessions on those, and then we have what we call cluster meetings for members who have similar offerings to each other. So things like holiday accommodation or office spaces or weddings, so that they can come together and really share that experience. We spend a lot of time connecting members with each other. That's a big part of what I do in my day-to-day job. So as well as connecting them with the experts and specialist support organisations, we connect members with each other to have that chat and sharing of experiences and helping each other. We work with the Development Trust Association Scotland and the Community Ownership Support Service, particularly for groups looking at community asset transfer or right to buy. They're government funded and they're the experts in that, so we send people to them. We also encourage groups to work in partnership a lot, particularly with their local authority or maybe expert heritage organisations in their area or charities. Quite often there are local charities who are experts in the end use of a building. So we'd always encourage groups to work together with the people who really know a certain topic. And we know that groups and projects are stronger and more sustainable when everyone's working together. Thanks to funding from the lottery for the last 3 years, we now have a YouTube channel full of event recordings for anyone to access. So do look us up there. It's a really easy area to point people to, a really easy resource. There's loads of different topics and areas. We've got all these recordings and expert speakers on, all on YouTube. We've also hosted our Heritage Trust Network Youth Forum for a couple of years now. So those are for 18 to 30-year-olds who are maybe new to the sector, looking to forge a career in the sector. And the main purpose of the Youth Forum is to help amplify young people's voices in the heritage sector, help them gain connections and advice from the wider membership, and really help them figure out what area they want to go into, help them build that real matrix of people that they know all over the country. Looking at information advice, we have a team of experienced staff and trustees, and our regional committees have members who've been there, done that, and certainly bought the t-shirt. As members told us in their feedback form from the 2022 conference, there's no hierarchy, there's no intimidation here, and everyone within the network is here to give support and get support. And I think that's absolutely crucial. There's no one who isn't benefiting from this. Everyone's got something to gain and something to give, and that's a really key thing to the work that we do. In addition to the network of people, we also have a range of digital resources that members can access at any time, including our talent bank, which is an area of our website that points to firms that our members have recommended. We find that's really helpful because we don't recommend the firms, we've not used them, but I've not hired that architect, that company, but 2 of our members have, and they had a really good experience, so they can recommend them. And that's what we have on our talent bank. We also have our member-only access digital toolkit. That is a huge online resource that just covers every single stage of a heritage project. It's got loads of case studies, best practice, lots of support and guidelines there, and that's accessible to only our members. And we also have an online community that allows members to reach out to others in their region or across the whole of the UK. So that's how everyone accesses information and advice through us. Looking now at advocacy, we think that not enough people know about the incredible work of heritage trusts, and we want to highlight the work that they do. So everybody wants more funding for their projects, and that's only going to come from the work being valued more highly. So we work with the sector forums such as Heritage Alliance and the Built Environment Forum Scotland to ensure that our message reaches decision makers. We also take quick polls, and we share the results on our website and on social media so that we've got up-to-date statistics and information on the grassroots heritage sector. And of course, the information goes back the other way too. We're in regular contact with our members to keep them updated on news from within the sector. Maybe that's funding, maybe that's awards, or new policy that's coming up. We're always sharing information. I mentioned our youth forum, but also we've recently run another young person initiative, which was called Digital Heroes. Digital Heroes was funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund in 2022 and 2023. This project launched a new stream of digital volunteering by linking 50 young people with 50 of our member organisations who needed some hands-on digital support. So this included tasks really as simple as establishing a Facebook page or a really basic website, just getting onto social media, all the way through to more complex challenges such as producing videos, making podcasts, and there've been some really, really brilliant results, including some young people choosing to continue with the trust they were matched with, volunteering for the longer term, which is brilliant. And now that the funded element of the project is finished, we will continue it on an ongoing basis, as and when members need support and volunteers come to us looking for opportunities. I want to give you an idea of a couple of our members. So the first one here, this is the Ridge in Dunbar, East Lothian. I suspect a number of you will have heard of them because they're quite the celebrity in the heritage world. They are a brilliant trust, engaged in high street regeneration, running apprenticeships and taking on buildings from the local authority. They've delivered numerous community benefits and revived the local area, particularly by offering training in traditional building skills for young people from challenging backgrounds. So they've used this training to restore dilapidated buildings that were previously both dangerous and eyesores in the local area, but they've also created a range of volunteering opportunities, particularly in their community gardens. And they've done that all through upskilling, training young people who weren't sure quite where they were going to go in life, and giving them this fantastic expert skill set, such as becoming stonemasons or joiners, skills that we need, skills that are important, and skills that are essentially well paid. So they've really boosted Dunbar by giving people life-changing careers. And we also have, just to mention, we've got other members at the Whithorn Trust down in Dumfries and Galloway doing similar work, supporting young people who are struggling in school at the moment with traditional skills training. And the hope is to see many more programmes like this across the country. And I know Historic Environment Scotland is working on that as we speak. So get in touch with them if you think this should come to your local area. And a different type of member now, to show the breadth of the organisations we're working with. Whilst I would say that the Ridge are very much experts now, at the beginning, they were a community group who'd not worked with traditional buildings before. So whereas the other end of the spectrum, this is the Scottish Lime Centre Trust, and they absolutely are the experts. So they're the experts in Scotland for stone analysis work, figuring out the history of lime use in a building, and advising on what should be used in any repair or restoration work. They deliver a huge amount of training in lime uses and wider traditional skills, such as slating, for professionals in construction, private homeowners, sector bodies, local authorities, even international groups. So hopefully some of you have used their services or been on their courses. They are fantastic. They're really, really accessible. You don't have to be an expert already. Anyone with no background at all can take part to find out more and really have a go. They're a not-for-profit organisation delivering huge impact on a shoestring and keeping traditional skills training alive. And I'm sure I don't have to mention that there are a number of stonemasonry courses recently that have closed. There's fewer and fewer places to learn and practice these traditional skills. So it's really important that we keep organisations like this going. To give you an idea of the cost of membership, we have a free startup membership for groups who are at the very beginning of their project, whilst it costs £100 for the full membership package with a much wider range of benefits. There's free membership for students to help them get into sector. And we also have membership options for larger professional heritage trusts, individual professionals, businesses. We have local authorities who are members as well. And all sign-ups are via our website. And one thing really to know here is actually if potential members are applying to the Architectural Heritage Fund or the National Lottery Heritage Fund or any of those funders, they're very welcome to include our membership fee in their funding bid. So if you're talking a community who want to sign up, but they don't have £100 a year, however, they're about to put in a funding bid, make sure they put our membership as part of that. Because as I said, the funders really want to see that these groups are not working on their own, and £100 per year is a small amount for them to pay to help make that happen. So that, in a nutshell, was an insight to the work of the Heritage Trust Network. And that was really at a UK level. But I want to come now on to talking about the projects that we are doing in Scotland, and particular work and particular strands of work that we get up to here. So the first one I'm going to talk about is churches. I'm sure most of you will be aware that there is a vast number of churches being disposed by the Church of Scotland, and this is happening over the coming years. There's about 400 churches being sold at the moment in the next few years, and there's possibly another round after that. So we've been focusing on supporting groups working with churches for a number of years now, and we've undertaken a range of projects to help them. And these have really been developed in response to the support requests and the feedback that we've received from the communities that we work with. So again, it's very grassroots up. First of all, we established an event series with Historic Churches Scotland in 2020. It's called A Future for Your Church, and it's an ongoing series where we invite groups who've already taken ownership of their church buildings to share their experiences with others. The recordings from these events have been made into video case studies that anyone can view on YouTube if they need some advice or inspiration, or again, an idea of the road ahead, what it looks like. Then again, with Historic Churches Scotland, we undertook a research project called Bridging the Gap with the Churches Conservation Trust and the Churches Trust for Cumbria. We looked at the barriers communities face when taking ownership of church buildings. And interestingly, we thought the main challenge would be funding. But actually, the community participants told us that engaging people to drive forward community ownership was the biggest barrier. So we thought it was all going to be about the money, but they told us actually it is all about people. So you can read the summary of that report online and request the full version if you fancy a much longer read. Just get in touch. That research project also led to the creation of our new resource called Your Church, Your Community. And I'm going to come on to chatting you through a bit of that in a minute. In particular, we discovered that in England, there are a lot of resources available to community groups, but actually very few churches are being sold at the moment. Whilst in Scotland, we've got many, many churches being sold, but hardly any resources. So developing that resource became a priority pretty quickly. Since launching it earlier this year, at the beginning of 2023, we've encountered huge demand for the resource, particularly for printed copies, and we've received some really fantastic feedback, evidencing the need for this information and support for community groups, which really doesn't look like it's going to slow down anytime soon. So before doing another print run, we'll be keen to update and improve the document, so all feedback is welcome if you have a chance to read it. Of course, as I've mentioned already, as part of what we do at Heritage Trust Network, we regularly respond to requests for advice and support, connecting people with the help they need. Depending on what stage of the process they're at and what they're looking to do with the building, we of course then point them to different organisations. I've already mentioned that we work with Historic Churches Scotland a lot, but also Scotland's Churches Trust, the Cherish programme from the National Churches Trust, and Historic Environment Scotland. So all of us together work in a partnership. We all triage groups, we point them to the right support depending on whether the building's still being used for worship or not, or who's the owner, or whether it's already taken ownership, or what's happening. We all work together and signpost to each other. But to streamline that process and make it a little bit easier, we recently launched our Churches Sector Map, primarily because we think it's very confusing for communities and professionals working within the sector to know what organisations are involved with this support matrix and who to go to for what. So we've mapped that out in an easy to use diagram, and I'll show that to you next. All of that support that I've now mentioned is on our website, and it is literally heritagetrustnetwork.org.uk/a future for your church, and you'll find it there. This is the resource that I mentioned. So it's for any community or group of interest who are thinking of taking ownership of a church building of any size, style, architectural importance or location. One of the most common questions that people ask us when they first get in touch is, what do I do next? So this resource is designed to help groups figure that out. And it was created by ourselves at Heritage Trust Network with Historic Churches Scotland and the Community Ownership Support Service. And as I say, it's going to evolve all the time, so any feedback is welcome. It lays out 12 steps that you can see here, starting with establishing a working group, gathering information about the building, talking to the community. And really the point is that every step, we want communities to stop and think, is this the right move? Should we take ownership of this building? Can we find its sustainable future? Can we keep it going? Before delving in and buying themselves a church. And here's the Churches Sector Map. It's very simple, very straightforward. We've got different categories of different organisations. Click on one of the bubbles that takes you through to a list of different organisations with a short description as to what they do and how they might be helpful, and then click through to their website. Another area of our work that I just wanted to mention was buildings at risk and building preservation trusts. So naturally, many of the buildings that our members are working with are buildings at risk, and they're on the register. So not only is it a priority for the heritage bodies and funders to revive these buildings and remove them from the register, but it's of great importance to communities too, and we see that time and time again. The impact locally of occupying empty buildings, finding new uses for them, and using them as a home for activities that maybe weren't thriving previously in the local area because they didn't have the right space. So as you know, it's becoming more and more common that communities will take ownership of these buildings through a community asset transfer, often from the local authority, undertake projects to revive them, and then manage them for the long term. So we want to do everything we can to ensure that we're supporting the groups who are doing that, removing any barriers, removing obstacles, so that we save their precious time and energy for the work that really matters. In particular, the National Trust for Scotland funds our work in Scotland to carry out all the activity previously mentioned, but we also work on their buildings at risk and support them in pushing projects forward. We also work with Building Preservation Trust very closely in Scotland to support, represent, and promote them as widely as possible. They are the experts in regenerating historic places, and they are huge contributors to the work that we do. So without them, there would be no experts to support these community groups carrying out projects. So it's absolutely vital that they're here for the long term. And I would always recommend that local authorities have a close relationship with a Building Preservation Trust in their area. And here's the last project that I'm going to talk about. Make Your Mark is a campaign that aims to increase the number and diversity of heritage volunteers. It is the Scottish heritage sector's response to the continuing realities of society's inequities and the need to increase community engagement with heritage, with volunteering being a main tool for this. So hopefully you've heard of Make Your Mark, but you may not. We believe that Make Your Mark, we became part of the work of Make Your Mark in about 2020, early 2020, and it is supported by a partnership between national stakeholders in the heritage and voluntary sectors. So there's many partners, there's kind of 20 or so organisations, and they'll include folk that you're familiar with, like Museums Galleries Scotland, Volunteer Scotland, the RSPB, and the Scottish Refugee Council, along with many more. And just to kind of delve into the background of why this is important, research shows that engagement with the historic environment, such as through volunteering, increases empowerment and helps to build a greater sense of place. Two key factors in building stronger communities, for sure. In turn, stronger communities are more likely to feel a sense of belonging that brings about a willingness to volunteer. So it's kind of like it's an ongoing cycle. So this benefits the heritage sector in many ways. More volunteers increases the human resource and assistance available to preserve and animate our heritage, which of course is very important. But also more diverse volunteers deepen the complexity of the stories and the histories that we can tell and improve everybody's understanding and awareness, thus becoming more inclusive in everything that we do, which is always a goal. So ultimately, Make Your Mark campaigns focus on inclusive volunteering will help to address inequity and at the same time safeguards and enhances the future of the heritage sector. So I think you can all see why we're behind that. And just to see that if you were to look at their website, which is makeyourmark.scot, they've got some fantastic resources, video case studies. They have their own series of events, which looks at things like class and heritage, which is really interesting. Lots of really helpful best practice resources, both for volunteer managers, but also it pushes opportunities from all of our community heritage and heritage organisations to the wider general public. So there's a free matchmaking platform for people who offer volunteer opportunities and want to engage some new people they haven't connected with before. So that's another line of our work in Scotland. So hopefully by now you'll understand what we can do for communities and hopefully for local authorities. You've got a better understanding of what we do. Like local authorities, we want to ensure that communities are connected with the right support and that you know where to send groups when they're working with traditional buildings. So thank you very much for attending, and thank you to our funders at Historic Environment Scotland and the National Trust for Scotland.